don't break back into Shawshank. If you're Andy Dufresne and you made it to the outside, just stay out there. What's this brochure called? Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Difficult Childhood. We're really excited to have you back with us this week. And we are discussing the Return to Jehovah brochure this week.
We sure are. And we're doing this because of comments. And we were talking about before how we do read the comments. Yeah. And one such comment popped up that struck me as very interesting. It sounded like it was a wife. They said that the couple were both disfellowshipped and they were working to get back to the organization. And immediately this is on the TikTok account, and immediately a bunch of other comments of XJWs were, why? Why? And what struck me is, right, just how, why? What struck me is, that might be a bit of a, please give me a reason not to. This doesn't feel right. And I remember when I was first coming out, and I didn't really know why it wasn't the true religion or wasn't the truth. I just was like, ugh, this makes me feel icky. And I see this comment, and I think that this comment is a little bit of an ask for help, because they are, as a disfellowship person who is trying to get back in, they are looking at apostate material on TikTok and on YouTube.
Yeah, let's be honest. If you are ready to recommit, if you're ready to just jump right back in, apostate material is not where you're going to be going. However, if you're on the fence and you're looking for, as Tracy Chapman said, give me one reason. Give me one reason not to join back up, or something more solid that I could stand on. An apostate site is where you would turn.
Right. And I thought it was neat because people weren't being rough on this person. I think it was her. They were just, come on, buddy, what are you doing? And I think that you can get some nice positive, there's obviously trolls and meanies everywhere, but sure. Yeah, so this made us want to kind of dive into this Return to Jehovah brochure, which they are still using as their this is how you should, why you should come back. These are the best reasons. And like we always say, like we are all aware, the governing body says specifically, do not look at apostate material, right? And because it will poison your mind. It's like poisonous water. Danger. And that's not the way thoughts work. They talk about how they're full of half-truths and outright lies. Yes, certainly there are liar apostates out there. But what I thought, and what we were talking about before, is maybe turning this on the governing body, because the governing body has written this brochure that will pop up on the screen here that literally lists the reasons why you should return. So let's look directly at the reasons. They don't want Jehovah's Witnesses to look at the reasons to say to go away. Let's look directly at the reasons to rejoin up as a Jehovah's Witness, and let's see if they hold water, if they're good reasons.
Yeah, this is kind of like their go-to pull you back in mechanism. I have been approached with this brochure multiple times from family members or friends of my parents, or even some friends of mine that are still inside the organization. And after, they share some well-intended words with me, they always say, please, go to the website, like, please take the time to look at the brochure. And I had skimmed through it for this video. But it wasn't until just a couple of days ago that I actually read the entire thing. And spoiler alert, it's a train wreck. It's really, really terrible. So we're going to just pick it apart.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to lead the way on the first part, or do you have what kind of points do you want to hit? I'm just obviously.
Well, first I was just going to talk about just the verbiage. They use such gentle wording, like almost to the point it's patronizing. It's almost like, you know what you've done. We know what you've done. We're not mad. You've just drifted. It's, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's gorgeous. Let's start with that then. Go ahead.
Okay. So the brochure is not very long, and it starts out with a letter to the reader, and it addresses the reader as "Dear fellow believer." So right out of the gate, it's making an assumption that you do still believe, you're just, for whatever reason, not acting on it.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the verbiage that's used throughout this brochure, it's so like genteel. It's like the way you would talk to a child. It's almost to the point of being like patronizing. And they use
Yeah.
the word drift or drifted about 137 times. They don't ever say
Not
like,
one time in reference to Tokyo drifting,
no, although that's a good
which is a
angle. They should work that.
big missed opportunity. All right, go ahead.
So, um, they never say like if you've left the organization or you've been disfellowshipped from the organization. They always say if you've drifted from Jehovah, if you've drifted away, like you're a boat whose line has come untied from the dock and you've just gently drifted out to sea. So that just kind of stood out to me right away. So the
Yeah.
last paragraph of the letter to the reader, it says, carefully considering the circumstances and expressions of a number who have drifted away and prayerfully examining scriptures, blah, 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 will lead you back. So just be prepared to be talked to that way. Like they're
Talk
talking to
down
you
to,
with
yeah.
kid gloves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that struck me too. And of course, also, there's no denying that this is the opinion of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses because it is signed governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses.
There's no question.
That's pretty rare that they actually do that. Usually they'll cite the Watchtower, and it's of course them that wrote it, and they is the Watchtower says that supports what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
and it's but this is not that situation, and they already at the first paragraph of the opening letter kind of, and we'll get into these later, but they talk about the three different main reasons, or excuse me, the different main reasons that they think are really the only reasons that anyone would ever leave the religion.
Right.
And it's worth a read. I would have a look through, but maybe should we take apart the parts 1 and 2 and so forth? Let's start with part 1. Should we take that one apart?
Yeah, let's do it.
I noted. Okay. So actually, I do need to back up a little bit to the very first cover page. Somebody left a comment. I'll pop it up here. Look at the picture on the cover. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's something very weird about this picture. Why is his thumb as long as his fingers?
I mean, that's Cro-Magnon, man. I
Okay,
don't know.
I'm being petty, I know, but once somebody commented, why is his thumb like that? I can't unsee it. It's really funny to me. But we also see on the cover that we are supposed to be like the little sheep, and we're just hopelessly lost. Then the little sheep doesn't have a thought in its little head, but we're just hopelessly lost if we're not in the organization. And the organization equals God, as you know. So anyway,
Yeah.
back to part 1. The sheep is bewildered. It starts with, and that's exactly how anyone who leaves the organization, we're just wandering. We're not. There's no such thing as a conscientious objector to the organization. There's nobody with critical thinking out there. They're just bewildered.
Yeah, in the first paragraph, like you mentioned earlier, in the first paragraph of the letter to the reader, it names the three things, the three reasons that someone potentially could allow themselves to drift. So the first one
Yeah.
is some are weighed down by troubles and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Option number 2, some have been deeply hurt by family members or fellow worshipers. And then option
That's
number
the second one.
3, some are plagued by guilt over their own mistakes. So those, like you said, those are the only 3 options. There could be no conscientious objection to doctrine, policies, nothing. None of that's even on the radar.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that kind of, I mean, the first paragraph, the first intro section is just pretty much them talking about how we can rejoin with the organization. Sorry. There is something on page 5 of this brochure. If you look at it here, I have it up on the screen. It says the 3 reasons that we should rejoin the organization or return to Jehovah, as they said. And the first one is he feeds us spiritually. What do you think about the kind of spiritual, as a Christian, the kind of spiritual food that you get at the meetings of Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, most of the spiritual food that they're doling out is based on their teaching, like their doctrinal teaching. And they say it's based on the Bible, but it's based on their Bible. So already we're starting on the wrong foot. I felt like this brochure, we talk a lot, or we hear a lot of talk about love bombing, and how that's like a
Yeah.
tactic that you encounter a lot within the congregations. I feel
Right.
like this brochure is the printed version of love bombing. It's
Oh, yeah.
just like patting you, like just comforting you. Everything's going to be fine. Focus on the good times. We're ready
Don't you
to
worry your
welcome
pretty
you
little
back.
head.
Like it's just so over the top. Um,
Hmm. Which is not the way, by the way, we'll get there later. Like when you walk back into a kingdom, I'll have been there for a while. That's not generally, I mean, there's some love bombing, but there's also a lot of awkwardness, but we'll get there.
Yeah, under this second heading, he protects and supports us. It shares the scripture from Ezekiel where it says, "The stray I will bring back, the injured I will bandage, the weak I will strengthen." Nowhere does he say, "I'm going to chastise and then punish the sheep for straying," even though
Right.
clearly there's no thoughts in its head. It's just drifting. Um,
Right.
It doesn't talk about God implementing a judicial process to deal with the sheep.
See, I think this is the trickiest part about recording this episode because there's so much nonsense up front that it's very tempting to get into the next few layers, which both of us have been doing, because there's so much nonsense up front. It's so frustrating. And also, he protects and support us. Maybe it's just talking about spiritual things, but a lot of other religions protect and support people, with the bandaging and whatnot. They have hospitals. They actually help people. Jehovah's Witnesses don't have anything of a sort.
Yeah.
They don't actually help people in any practical way. Unless you have homeowners insurance, then they'll go ahead and rebuild your house, but you need to have the check sent back, if there's a natural disaster.
Future episode. Future
Um,
episode.
and the third one is he feels responsible for us. Well, how do their version of God feels responsible for you? So I'm supposed to return because with no indication that God feels anything about me, that Jehovah's Witness God feels anything about me, I'm supposed to feel that he feels responsible for us.
Yeah.
So he's responsible for us and that he'll kill us all later if we don't come back. There's just those 3 paragraphs. He feeds us spiritually, he protects and supports us, he feels responsible for us. Within the Jehovah's Witness organization, those things have no meaning. They're saying literally nothing.
The sentence under that third heading about he feels responsible for us, it says, "To Jehovah, a lost sheep is not a lost cause." And the last time that my mom and dad really made like a big push to try to like pressure me a little bit to start coming back to meetings.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
can't remember which one of my parents, but they used that exact phrase, you know, "You're a lost sheep, not a lost cause." And I thought, well, that's insulting. Of course I'm not a lost cause. Like, why would you
I
say
didn't
that
know
to
that was on the
someone?
table.
Yeah.
Yikes. Okay, so first one, anxiety. This is the first reason that we could possibly be inactive. And I thought June was interesting here. She says, after 25 years of marriage, my husband and I got divorced. My children left the truth. I developed several serious health problems. Then I became depressed. I felt that my whole world had fallen in on me and I couldn't even cope with anything anymore. I stopped going to the meetings and I became inactive.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a lot of
A lot of
if that's a
information.
real person,
Yeah,
that's a lot to deal with. That's no fun.
sure.
And of course, the natural response would be to kind of, cocoon and go back within yourself. That's, a lot of people. I've done that before when I went through hard times.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mention anything about like Well, I mean, going back to, and we'll get back to June later, but like going back to the organization won't help her with her health problems because they don't help you with anything medical. There's no fund in all the worldwide work to help Jehovah's Witnesses with their medical bills,
Not that I'm aware of.
so they don't lose their homes or something.
Under the heading renew our days as in those of old, when it's starting to, it wants the reader to reflect on why it says Jehovah, but you might as
Oh,
well.
I'm sorry. Is this back? Are we rolling back to number 1 then? Sorry.
Yeah, there was just one more thing.
Oh, my apologies.
And it says, because he wants you to be happy, he promises blessings that will pour down like the rains. So just the fact that they're saying, if you have any chance of happiness, this is the way. Coming back, rejoining, that's the only way. If you want to be happy, you want blessings in your life, then this is how you're going to do it. It's a promise. It says, this is no empty promise. So, I mean,
Then it also is not specific in any way. Like, how will that happen?
well, they can't be too specific.
Yeah.
You got to have something to back it up with. So we're going to keep it vague. Just blessings, just general happiness.
General happy blessings from heaven. And well, this takes us right into the next chapter, which is chapter, they're so short. Anxiety, hard pressed in every way, which is about when everything goes wrong in your life, what, who are you going to call? And June is quoted here as, after 25 years of marriage, my husband and I get divorced. That stinks. We've both been there.
Yes.
My children left the truth, air quotes. I developed several serious health problems. Then I became depressed. I felt that my whole world had fallen in on me and I couldn't cope with anything more. I stopped going to the meetings and I became inactive. So what she's saying is that all this stuff went wrong when she was in the organization. And then she got depressed and became active. So she wasn't getting those problems solved in the organization.
But wait, what about the happiness and the blessings? She was already
the
on
happiness, the blessings. So the organization tries to have it both ways. They want to go, well, you're going to have all the blessings and everything's going to be happy, but also everything's going to be hard all the time, and don't give up even though everything's hard all the time.
Yeah, you're going to have a target on your back for doing what's right, but just keep doing it.
Well, maybe we should start doing what's wrong.
Presupposing June's the real person, that sucks.
That's the next thing. We assume if that is a real person, and they didn't just make this up, because I remember there was a couple of quotes, I can't remember what it was, maybe somebody in the comments can tell me, of like little kids, something about, hi, I don't need a 5-minute birthday party. I have parties anytime I want. Like some kid about how why it was fine to do without birthdays. And then there's no way a 6-year-old said that. Stop it.
Right.
So they're fine making quotes up, but even for their purposes, June here had all these problems go wrong when she was in the organization, and as a result, she faded out and became inactive.
Yeah.
So the power beyond what is normal through their organization wasn't there to help her, keep her supported. Where was her support network in the congregation to keep her from getting depressed? And where was her support network to help her with her serious health problems when she had to go to the hospital? Were they helping her with her medical bills? And was that support there? Where's the practical support?
Or where were the people that were encouraging her to get mental health or psychiatric services when she, by her own admission, was battling depression?
Yes.
They were saying, just
amen.
Study more. Go out and service more.
Mm-hmm. Have you read the Family Happiness book? I don't have a family guide.
Have you prayed about
it? Have you prayed about it, like Lester? And then it goes on to say in the next caption here that Jehovah never expects more from us than we can give. Well, I mean, that was more than she could give. Go in.
Yeah, there's quite a few misleading statements, because does actual God expect more than you can give? No. Does the organization expect more than you can give? Yes, it does. How do I know that? I lived it my whole childhood.
Yes, absolutely. I remember sitting at I think it was an annual meeting with Rebecca. We were still married at the time, and then I think it was Anthony Morris was carrying on about all the stuff you need to be doing, and it basically was this insane schedule of 7 days a week. Something must be going on,
Yeah.
and I remember her just dropping her Bible and go, "When are we supposed to live?"
Yeah.
Like, and you're not supposed to
Well,
have
it's like
any
Mike
independent
said
thought or
on the
any time
last
to live.
episode. He said, you work 6 days a week. And then in the
Hmm.
day you have to yourself, you're expected to keep up with all these other spiritual responsibilities that aren't technically work, but are
Hmm.
100% work. It's just too much. And they even inadvertently admit that it's too much, because on that same page under the heading that says taste and see that Jehovah is good, it talks about if you are facing situations that are leaving you drained, whether it's physical health, family problems, and then it says, what if your secular work claims the time and energy that you would otherwise spend with the congregation? Faced with so many demands and too little time and energy to handle them, you may feel overwhelmed. I'm sorry, what? You just like they're literally saying, yeah, working a full-time job, all your responsibilities in the congregation, you're going to be overwhelmed. It's just so much to keep up with. And with the cost, especially
Hmm.
now, cost of living outrageous. Both parents have to work if you have multiple children, um, or even
Oh
one
yeah,
children, even no children. Uh, you're just working more than ever before.
one children.
So the idea that you're going to be overwhelmed, they're saying, oh, don't be sad about that. That's normal. Yeah,
Fuck up, little camper.
it is normal. I mean, unfortunately, it's normal, but um, it's almost like they showed their hand without meaning to.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And on the last subheading, the little paragraph there, it says the boost I'd been waiting for. We get a little wrap up on June. I kept praying to Jehovah, asking him to help me. So this is not someone who's been engaging critical thinking and asking if this is God's organization.
Right.
This is someone who's, if this is a real person, has been praying that God help her. And then my daughter-in-law told me about the assembly in my town. So apparently both of her kids left the truth. So the daughter-in-law is still in the truth. Um, and then what a wonderful feeling it was to be back with Jehovah's people. So that assembly gave her some sort of boost, and now she's joyfully serving Jehovah again. There's no mention of any of her problems being resolved,
Even
but she just had a period that she went through of deep depression. She came back out of it and thought, hey, I don't want to build a whole new group. I've got these people that already know me, and and a hyper demanding organization that will ask everything, and I'll just go back to that. So I mean, it can be easy to just think, okay, well, let's just go back because we already know those people. I get that part of it,
but this
but
statement from her doesn't even make any sense. Okay, so she has
correct.
grown children, so we're going to assume that she's, a little up in years. She's been married multiple decades. At the end of her statement, towards the end, it says, life has so much more meaning for me, more than ever. I know I can't isolate myself. So, um, you just totally bounce back. Like you're just it's better than ever. You're just living the dream
Hmm.
now, alone, separated from your children and your husband. Good for
Well, that's the other
you,
side of it.
June.
Her children have left the truth, and so now she's not going to be talking to them anymore.
Yeah, she says, more than ever, I know that I can't isolate myself or go it alone. Well, if you are choosing to not have any communication with your grown adult free thinking children that have left the organization, you're choosing to go it alone. You
Absolutely,
just don't realize it.
absolutely. Hmm.
All
I
right.
think that about covers that one.
So
That was a good thought. Chapter 3, hurt feelings
This
when
is
we
my
have cause for complaint.
this is
Ooh,
my
this
favorite
one's
one.
rough. Go.
This woman, the section number
The
3
picture?
opens with the
Oh,
same thing, like a quote or an experience from this woman named Linda. She says, a sister
listen.
in my congregation wrongly accused me of stealing money from her. Others learned of it and began to take sides. Eventually, she told me she had received new information. I was exonerated. And even though she apologized, I felt in my heart I could never forgive her for what I'd gone through. This made me laugh for a couple of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
um, it's, I feel like, fairly common knowledge that Jehovah's Witnesses do not sue each other in court. They don't pursue like monetary damages or whatever, because they feel like that brings reproach on Jehovah's name. So
Right.
99.9% of all disputes are just handled hush hush. And that's why a lot of witnesses don't go into business together, because if there ever was that kind of dispute, they feel like there's no way they could like seek
Dishonor
recourse
God.
if something financially went wrong, because you don't sue each other.
Right.
Okay. So it just made me laugh that she was accused of taking money, because even if you had taken that money, there's nothing she can do about it. Nothing that she's
Nope.
going to do about it. You should have just stole that money, Linda. Um, but then also it says that eventually everyone in the congregation had learned of it. So Betty Busybody apparently was, running her yap and gossiping, which also is like a deadly sin to the witnesses,
Betty.
but everybody does. Um, so yeah, I don't know that I would want to be this person's friend, because not only did she
Also,
accuse you, but then she told everybody about it.
right. Also, have you heard a more made-up sounding situation? A sister in my congregation wrongly accused of stealing money from her. Did you take the money or didn't you? That should be pretty cut and dry.
Listen, Linda,
Others in the
listen.
congregation learned it. Eventually, the sister, she got new information. I'm sorry, she got new information about where her money went. That doesn't at all seem like something, and it exonerated me.
It seems highly scripted.
That just seems like such a absolutely made up scenario. There's no way that was real.
Listen, Linda, we know you're fake.
You guys.
And of course, if someone has taken money from you, but then, or even if they had taken money from you, or they talked bad about you, yeah, those are things you probably should try to let go. Like this lady in the picture, you probably try to let that, because it'll benefit you. But it doesn't mention the massive other ways that people are hurt in the congregation. The horrific ways that people are hurt, and then they too, everyone who is hurt is grouped in with this group that and let's see here, it's on page 8. It says to forgive is not to condone. So you should forgive everyone instead of staying resentful forever. I can think of several things that should not be forgiven.
Yeah, I know exactly where your brain's going. There's always a big push with these types of statements. Just because you forgive doesn't mean you're condoning. And then it says Jehovah never approves of sin, but does forgive if there's a basis for doing so. And this is the ideology that is pushed when people that are accused or even uh, confess to like CSA type crimes. Elders often say, well, we don't condone it. Of course, it's wrong. But, if Jehovah can forgive, if there's basis for God to forgive, we mirror that by forgiving ourselves. So yeah, you're going to see
And
that repeated in multiple publications.
And of course, evidence of Jehovah forgiving is that the elders reinstated or
Right.
didn't disfellowship the person who was the perpetrator or the accused. Or maybe a mother of a child who's been victim of CSA, and then there weren't two witnesses. That mother of that child, that father of that child, they are expected to forgive the brother let's be honest, it's brothers.
Right.
It's dudes that are problem.
Most.
There's very rarely a sister that does this.
Right.
And then they're expected to forgive them for the peace and unity of the congregation. And also, if there wasn't a second witness, then if they tell other people about the incident, well, then that's gossiping about their brother, and they can get in trouble for talking badly about their brother who was accused of CSA.
Right.
But of course, in this weird little universe, it's only petty things like, oh, we had an accounting error, and that's the reason that we didn't get along and I left, and that was such a silly reason. That's why I should come back.
Yeah, it couldn't be that, oh, you cover up CSA. That's not a possibility.
Yeah. It's definitely the CS stands for other stuff, but the A stands for accounting. Definitely, that's their main problem in the organization is money being pilfered. Get the hell out of here. Anyway,
And the
Linda.
statements that they make, like they compare holding on to resentment, like holding a heavy rock, and the longer you hold on to it, the heavier it gets. And then on the next page, under this horrendous picture, it says, when we let go of resentment, we benefit ourselves. So it's basically saying, again, almost like that sweet talk, like patronizing, like, help yourself, just let it go. And there may be
Yeah, you little lamb.
occasions when that's a possibility, but there's definitely a much bigger picture for occasions when it's not a possibility, nor should it be a possibility. So yeah, you can't just paint with that broad stroke, like we should just forgive when people say they're sorry.
And those situations that end up involving CSA are not rare things. There's things that I don't know about you, but I have known people who were involved in that.
Yeah.
And then the perpetrator was treated like a sinner and not reported. And let's not drag the local police in. It's a small town.
Yeah, they always treat it as a sin only and not a crime.
I mean, I wouldn't give any specifics, Laverne, Minnesota, but
Yeah.
I'm leaving that shit in.
Right. Last section, number 4, guilt.
This is the final and only other reason you could have left the organization. You're a
This
sinner.
is the nail in the coffin. And I am going to read this whole opening statement, because when I tell you this is a complete fabrication, not that this woman is necessarily a complete fabrication, but after I read to you her opening statement, and then later when we get to her her summary statement, I promise you 100% I can tell you this is lies. So it says, my new job improved our family's standard of living, but it also led me into all sorts of questionable activities. I began to celebrate holidays, participate in local political events, and even attend a church. I was inactive as one of Jehovah's Witnesses for 40 years. The more time that went by, the more I thought I was beyond Jehovah's forgiveness. I felt that I couldn't forgive myself. After all, I knew the truth before I headed down the wrong path. Okay. Well, so it shares the lesson of the prodigal son. And it's saying, like, just like the prodigal son, the father is ready to welcome you back home. But when the prodigal came back to the father in the story, the father just laid eyes on him. He didn't know if he had changed his life. He didn't know if he had turned away from his sin or, left all that lifestyle behind him. He just saw him. And that was enough. He said, start the celebration, slaughter the calf. We're going to throw down. We're going to party. So that's not the experience that you're going to have if you've been involved in these activities that Martha lists: holiday celebration, attending a church, being involved politically, yada, yada, yada. How do I know this? Well, I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to scroll down to her summary statement. at the end. This is at the bottom of page 11. It says her son continued to send her Watch Terror and Awake magazines. Little by little, she got reacquainted. The hardest part was coming back and asking for forgiveness for all the sins I had committed. That makes me so mad because who are you asking for forgiveness that you couldn't ask before you came back to the Kingdom Hall? Because it's flawed thinking already. If you think you have to come back to the Kingdom Hall and like set up a meeting with this, body of elders after 40 years, you're not going to know any of them anyway. So a group of strange men and detail every like mistake or sin you've committed for the last 40 years. If you think that's what you have to do for God's forgiveness, you're asking for the forgiveness of those people, because you don't have to go grovel and humiliate yourself to ask for God's forgiveness. And I think when I left the organization, that was one of the most like freeing concepts. The elder body, their opinion does not matter. If you feel whatever it is, if you feel that you've made a mistake, maybe it's something a little bigger, maybe it's something very tiny. If it's something that is bothering your conscience, all you have to do is just pray, just lay it before God. You don't have to act like a shamed child and like crawl in there and degrade yourself. That's ridiculous. That makes me so mad. Sorry, getting a little
No,
like worked up.
don't be sorry.
But okay, so she says she came back after 40 years, asked for forgiveness. She approached God in prayer, asked him for forgiveness. I'm living proof that after many years, someone can come back uh, and be given another chance to start over. So she portrays it like she led this life for 40 years. She came back. She asked for forgiveness. They said, yep, it's all good, and just welcomed her right back. I know this is poppycock because when I first became inactive, I had gone to a couple of like holiday parties with like my coworkers, a Christmas party, like a silly like Halloween party. And then at one point, I was still living out of state, right before I moved back to the town where my parents lived. I was like very undecided about what I was going to do because I couldn't move back to the town where my family lived if I wasn't active. I just wasn't like emotionally in a place to like cut the cord. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to, kind of like start going back to meetings so that when I get home, um, it's not like a shock to everyone's system. So I went back to a few meetings in a different congregation, an hour, 2 hours from where I had lived previously. And when I met with the elders, which is the normal protocol, I did not know any of them. They asked for basically a summary of whatever I had done wrong since I had quit going to meetings prior. And I hadn't really done anything like bad. And I said, oh, I've gone to some like holiday parties. And their immediate question was, is that locally? Like, is this locally? And I said, no, I, previously lived somewhere else. And I thought, why does that make a difference? And basically they said, well, if locally people that knew you knew that you were involved in that type of activity, and then you also wanted to, reassociate with the congregation, you would need to be publicly reproved. But if no one knows, we can just give you a private reproof. So right there, that was a red flag to me, because they were basically saying, well, the consequence for sin is different if people know about it. Like if it's public knowledge, we have to do this more extreme step. But if nobody
Show
around
me
here
the scripture
knows,
where it's the optics that matter.
yeah, we're just going to give you a slap on the wrist because it won't reflect that on us. And I thought, oh,
Oh gosh.
that doesn't sound good. And I've had friends that have been that shared similar things with me. Maybe when they were
Yeah.
dating, they were involved in like some heavy petting, and the elders basically said the same thing. Does anybody else know about this besides you and your boyfriend or girlfriend? Because that makes a difference. Your punishment.
So strange. And then in this situation, there's also just sorry, little small note here. She says in that last paragraph, little by little I became reacquainted with Jehovah. There is something woven into that little statement there. And it is this notion that when you leave the organization, you start forgetting. It just flips right out of your pretty little simple head.
You drifted.
You suddenly forgot because the only reason you could possibly not be doing what's right is either you love what's bad or you're just forgetting. The Holy Spirit lifts right off you. I remember my parents saying stuff like this. Well, and I remember thinking stuff like this, that when somebody left and suddenly they just kind of forget about the holy standards and the perfect righteousness of the organization. That's not the case. I remember every stupid little detail. It isn't something that just escaped me and started falling away from me as soon as I left. And then the hardest part of coming back was asking forgiveness, like you already said,
Yeah.
for all the sins I had already committed. But she mentions, and we're getting into this a little bit more, she mentions nothing about the consequences for those things.
And again, all the verbiage they talk about sins being blotted out. He's ready to pardon transgression. Um, he wants you to experience a clear conscience. Uh,
You were thinking of Catholicism, GB,
but
because that's not how JWs work.
yeah, they don't go into any detail about what it means according to their practices to have that transgression blotted out, which is
Mm-hmm.
to basically humiliate yourself and grovel before these men.
Mm-hmm. And who was it? Her son keeps sending Watchtower. So now when she comes back, she has to get disfellowshipped, then reinstated, and this is before the new lighter disfellowshipping rules.
Right.
So she would have been
Oh,
disfellowshipped, and then
mhm.
had to go through a year or whatever, and not talking to her son. Okay, now you can talk to me again. But
Yeah. At the time this was published, this is like more old school JW rules. They changed it a little bit. Lloyd Evans
mm-hmm.
basically made a statement that summarized it best. He said they're making it harder to get disfellowship to begin with. And if you are disfellowshipped, they're making the duration of that excommunication much shorter. So
Right.
harder
So
to
if
get out
this
of
had been written now, I could maybe give it a little bit of a pass. But this was written during the really harsh disfellowshipping rules. The ones where my brother, as I said in a past video, did basically almost 2 years of hard time trying to get back in over the course of two disfellowshippings that were right next to each other. The next one is just, it's a bunch. Do you have any comments on this number 5 section on page 12? I don't think I really do.
it. Basically just, again, like just misleading statements. It just says like, be prepared to be honest, but just know that there's nothing but love waiting for you on the other side. There's nothing but welcoming. Um,
Mhm.
just
You see everybody in
inaccurate,
the picture smiling and hugging.
yeah, inaccurate portrayals of what
Mhm.
that reentry process is going to be like.
Mhm. And 0 mentioned if you're already disfellowshipped, what that reentry process is going to look like. Because this is arguably, well, it's certainly for people, not arguably, this is certainly for people who are disfellowshipped as well or disassociated
Yeah,
because they want to get back in. Well, here's the path to that, and no mention of yeah, you know what? There should be a whole chapter on, you're going to have to do some hard time. You're going to have to spend some time going to the meeting, no one talking to you, everyone looking at you weird, literally sitting in the back, being ashamed, leaving immediately, arriving just as it starts,
Yeah.
and taking your medicine. There's no mention of that, which takes us to the last section here, where it says answers to questions about returning to Jehovah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And what did you think of these? I have so many thoughts on the third one, but did you have some
Horrible.
other thoughts on
This
the first two?
is so horrible, y'all. Just don't do it. Just don't go back. If you made it
Deceptive.
out,
This is so deceptive.
okay, don't break back into Shawshank. If you're Andy Dufresne and you made it to the outside, just stay out there. Anyway, so yeah, there's 3 questions from readers, and the middle one on the page says, "How will the congregation receive me?" Now, some of that may depend on the reason that you left. Again, they never mention that you just left because you felt it was wrong or it wasn't the truth. So it says,
Right.
"How will the congregation receive me?" And it says, "You can be sure that the congregation will warmly welcome you rather than criticize or judge you. They'll confirm their love for you and do whatever they can to encourage you." No. I saw people on
No.
numerous occasions get reinstated, and after their reinstatement was announced, there might be a few people like after the meeting that come up and speak to them, but it's almost like someone that's been highly contagious for a long time suddenly like re-enters your
Right.
workplace. They're like cleared to come back to work, but you're still very nervous to be around them.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely
That doesn't say there wouldn't be a love bombing initially. Oh, it's so great to see you back here. All that, just heavy handed love bombing. But after that, it's okay, well, we'll have to reconnect. You're going to be weird after that.
And a lot of people might remember this. It used to be years ago when someone was reinstated that you clapped. Yay, they're back. And
Mm-hmm.
then they said, no, when someone is reinstated, that we just,
Oh, yeah. I
very
remember that.
reserved, in a reserved way, like we just quietly appreciate that, Jehovah has allowed them to rejoin the congregation. We don't make like a big show of it. And I know
Remember the reason
I don't understand that.
they gave?
That doesn't are
Well,
we?
they gave the reason of, what if this person did something that hurt somebody, and we don't want that to give the impression that we endorse what they did and that they are righteously, they never should have been out in the first place, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's like, I mean, are we celebrating their return or not? I
Yeah,
mean,
fair point.
if the prodigal's home, are we throwing this party or are we not? But then, okay, you go ahead and take the third one because that's the word.
Oh my gosh. So how will the elders help me? This is their last opportunity to come clean. This is the car salesman not telling you about the balloon payment at the end of the deal. This is, yeah, but it is their last chance to talk about how it might involve being disfellowshipped and in atoning, as they say, for your sins.
Yeah.
That maybe that's part of the process. This is what they say. The elders will treat you kindly. They will commend you for your desire to rekindle the love you had at first. They will mercifully help you to correct any mistakes you have made, doing so in a spirit of mildness. Hidden right in that sentence is the possibility of being disfellowshipped again.
Yeah.
Right there, it's hidden there. But that sounds great to somebody who's just, okay, that's not that hard. The elders may arrange for you to be disfellowshipped and shunned by all your family. Oh no, wait, no, sorry, it doesn't say that. It says the elders may arrange for someone to conduct a study with you. Well, that's easy. Perhaps in a publication such as Enjoy Life Forever or Draw Close to Jehovah. Rest assured, the elders will comfort and support you every step of the way.
Yeah.
Not a single mention of the shunning that is very likely waiting for you.
Yeah. When it says they'll help you correct your mistakes, that's That's like a sugar-coated way of saying you're going to have to take your licks. You know, you got to just take what's going to be doled out to you. But of course, they can't say that directly. So they tie it up in this pretty wording bow.
It's disgusting. And then the example they give of Victor is so perfectly woven to dance around disfellowshipping. He says, during the 8 years that I was inactive, doesn't acknowledge that he did anything wrong, like like the first, it was Jane.
Yeah.
During the first 8 years I was inactive, or the 8 years I was inactive, sorry, try it again. During the 8 years I was inactive, the elders kept reaching out to me. One day, an elder showed me some pictures he had taken of us. Okay, that's fine. They brought back so many wonderful memories that I left my live-in girlfriend and stopped celebrating Christmas. No, he doesn't say any of that stuff, because apparently this guy was living like one of Jehovah's Witnesses, but just not going to meetings. So he's the prime example that we want to show here of how easy it is going to be to come back. Yeah, but if you're living like a regular person, there's no way you're coming back without massive consequences. And it's absolutely disgusting what they've done here.
What I took away from Victor's little statement here is it's almost like, again, without meaning to, they're showing how harmful the shunning policy is. Because he says, they showed me pictures that they had taken of all of them before. So, you know,
Yeah.
we're going to imagine that this is pictures of him with like friends or family members from the congregation from his like time on the inside. So it's almost like they're emotionally baiting him. Like, oh, all these people that, you know, have been shunning you all these years, this big wound that you've been carrying inside your heart. Look at these pictures. Let's kind of like push on this bruised part of your heart for a minute. And it's like
That's
they're
interesting. I didn't think about that.
establishing emotional leverage to pull him back in.
So they end this whole thing with a QR code that leads you to a version of "He will make you strong," and that is one of their most emotionally dripping. With, oh my gosh, I'm so sad, and I just want to be out of the darkness into the light. So they end the whole thing, all these lies and deceptions and omissions and half truths, which is what they accuse apostates of doing, and they land you on, here, whip out your phone and listen to this song.
No, thank you. And then
It's oh, I'm sorry, there's one more page.
yeah, the
Go ahead.
very end of it just kind of goes along like with what I was just saying about Victor's experience. It shows these like 3x5 photographs of these, you know, friends, these sisters. It looks like they're at like maybe a district convention. And it says, do you ever reminisce about the good times you had with Jehovah's people, a conversation with a fellow believer? So again, they're saying, you know, you've been cut off, you've been shunned, you're not communicating with your friends. Don't you miss that? And I've said before, the reason they choose shunning over other religious, you know, reparations, Hail Marys, you know, praying the rosary, things like that, is because it's effective, because it goes against our natural instincts to connect with people. So the fact that they're showing these like photographs and using that kind of wording, like, don't you miss those conversations with your friends? It just shows what a cruel setup it is.
Absolutely disgusting and manipulative and dishonest. So if you are thinking of returning to the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses, the Christian congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, as they call themselves, yeah, maybe just read this brochure yourself. And I would love to hear if you think there's anything wrong with our reasoning here. We will absolutely listen to the comments. Did we get this wrong? Were we being too hard on this? Was there something that we said that was factually incorrect? Because there certainly was a lot of inaccuracies in this brochure.
Absolutely. We always welcome a dialogue on anything that we discuss. But if this has been your experience with this brochure, if somebody shared it with you, we'd like to know your initial takes on it at that time. And then also just in your own deep dive into it, what do you think about it now?
Yeah.
Okay, before we go, I want to share something that is just, it made me so happy, and I hope it will make you happy too. A little backstory. In 2006, I think that then, Rebecca, my wife and I at the time, we went to New York and we did all the Jehovah's Witness things you're supposed to do. We went and toured Bethel, and we just kind of felt a little bit, okay, there it is. They make books. There's some office buildings. And to kind of cheer her up, and we went to Juilliard. We did a little tour of Juilliard, and we went and saw students put on a concert. And for context, Rebecca is a cellist, and she played in an orchestra in high school, but then she had to quit all that to go pioneer. And I after we left the concert, we're in this courtyard at Juilliard. And I saw her, I don't know why she was so far away from it, I don't remember, but I just saw her and she looked so profoundly unhappy. And I was moved for some reason to take a photo because I needed to remember that moment and kind of unpack why she was so unhappy. And she obviously, because she couldn't, she was in an organization, married to a Jehovah's Witness husband, and she couldn't pursue any of her dreams. She couldn't be part of an orchestra. She couldn't pursue music the way she wanted. She had offers for higher education involving music, and she didn't do any of that stuff because she started pioneering. And this picture just shows so much a woman who has had their dream pushed down and crushed by a high control organization. And I thought that was just awful. And that kind of haunted me for years, especially after we woke up and came out of the organization. But last weekend, in the last year, she's joined an orchestra here in the Portland area. And last weekend, she played her first concert. And I'm just so proud of her, so happy for her. And I just want to share her story there. She said I could. And
That's amazing.
There's just so much else to do outside of this organization. So anyway, here's a clip from her concert.